On another important matter, the nation's report card was released this week, and the news is not good. It showed that U.S. students had record low reading comprehension scores last year. It's National School Choice Week, and in part of the president's commitment to education, he just left a roundtable in the Roosevelt Room focused on this issue with leaders from across the country. The national report card showed that 70% of 8th graders were below proficient in reading, and 40% of 4th graders did not even meet the basic reading levels. This is completely unacceptable to the president, and he continues to take aggressive actions to address this education problem in our country. He signed an executive order this week prohibiting federal funding of the indoctrination of our children, including radical gender ideology and critical race theory in the classroom. The president believes American education should focus on cultivating patriotic citizens who are ready for the workforce. And this action will help get schools back on track and defend fundamental parental rights in education. The president also signed a school choice executive order expanding educational freedom and opportunity for families. Our education system is failing students in this country. The nation's report card, I brought it up in my remarks last week, it shows that 4th graders are not reading at the level they should. I believe it was 40% of them are proficient in reading. As the mother of a child, I want an education system that helps my child read and write, teaches him math, nothing else in the classroom. And the president is wholeheartedly committed to we can make academia great again.
President Trump is not failing America's children. He is saving America's children with this action that he will take later today, directing Linda McMahon, our great Secretary of Education, to dismantle this federal bureaucracy that has taken more than $3 trillion from the American taxpayer since its inception in 1979. And what have we had as a result of that investment in our children's education? Declining test scores in reading, writing, and math. Proficiency levels at record lows for 8th graders, for 4th graders, at every level in every state across this country. That's why the president is returning education back to the people, to those closest to our students in our classrooms, and that is teachers and educators and parents who know what is best for their children. And we are excited about this event that will be here later in the afternoon at the White House. We will have parents and educators and students and also governors from across the country who are excited to embrace this new responsibility of educating our nation's children. I will add one more point. The Department of Education has never educated a child. All it has ever done is stolen money from the taxpayers for more regulation that has hurt our children's education. And it's about time a president does something about it. And thank God President Trump is.
Karoline, what do you say to critics of the president's education plan?
Where was their criticism of our nation's failing test scores for the last several decades? The Department of Education was founded in the 1970s, and since then we have spent more than $3 trillion at this federal bureaucracy. What has been the return on that investment for the American taxpayer? Levels that are less than ideal, less than proficient. Our children's test scores are incredibly concerning when it comes to reading rates, literacy rates, math, and science test scores. The numbers prove that, and this president is finally taking much needed action to return education to where it belongs, and that's to educators closest to students in their classrooms in their respective states. We're going to have a great event here later at 4 o'clock. There will be students here, teachers here, parents here, educators, and of course governors from around the country who are very excited about taking on this responsibility to educate our nation's students.
Who's going to run federal student loans?
So the Department of Education will be much smaller than it is today. As you know, the president's executive order directed Linda McMahon to greatly minimize the agency. So when it comes to student loans and Pell Grants, those will still be run out of the Department of Education, but we don't need to be spending more than $3 trillion over the course of a few decades on a department that's clearly failing in its initial intention to educate our students.
So is the federal government going to be spending
less?
less?
Much smaller than it is. Is it not going to be shut down completely? And then I have a second question.
As I said, Pell Grants and student loans will still be run out of the department in Washington, D.C., but the great responsibility of educating our nation's students will return to the states.
Donald Trump just basically had a photo op today. He didn't dismantle the Department of Education. It has to be done by an act of Congress. And I know that really bums him out, that there are other branches of government. She's taking notes. Bureau's taking notes. It's going to be bad. But what he's doing is making life really hard for the DOE to operate. And that's going to have a big effect for sure. Randi Weingarten, and I've said many times, I'm not a tremendous fan of hers. What she is making clear in that interview is that the curriculums are actually set on the state level. So when you look at the lowest ranked states for education, least educated places like Arkansas, places like Mississippi, West Virginia, run by Republicans, that's on them for that. That's not on her. She's not setting the curriculum. What the DOE does and why it was created by Jimmy Carter and why probably you can't get Democrats at least to vote to abolish it is that it's a funding and civil rights enforcement organization. And when I hear Republicans out there talking about their plan for education in America, I don't hear them talking about making sure disabled kids have access to a public education. I don't hear them talking about impoverished
because we're against
kids.
it.
I know you are. Thank you for admitting it on such a public forum. They want to end up privatizing it. They want a voucher system, which means that kids who can't get to those schools, don't have enough money to, or frankly want to go to public schools, won't have access. And they also have all of these religious kooks, like the superintendent of Oklahoma who wants to spend millions of dollars on Bibles for the schools, Trump Bibles, because it's all a grift. They want to make it private. They want to make them religious institutions. And that goes against what you're supposed to do in America. So does it need reform? Does it need to be made better? 100%. But come on.
What really matters in all of this, and the Democrats are hammering it, is that in the bill that the Republicans are putting forward, there will be $880 billion cut to Medicaid. And you see Republicans all over the country. And no, Jesse, these are not plants that are showing up at their town halls.
I never said that.
But you were thinking that.
Okay, so I headed you off. They were actually people who worked at the CDC in Rich McCormick's district. But people are showing up in Oklahoma, in Arkansas, Pennsylvania, Missouri, Wisconsin, and they're saying what's going on at DOGE is unacceptable. And are you kidding me with these Medicaid cuts?
Now you guys listen to the voters.
Trillions of dollars.
It's like the first time you listen to the voters, Jessica.
We are trying.
There's a fundamental math problem here. There is a constant reiteration of waste, fraud, and abuse. Sure, that's great. What is the identified amount of waste that this committee has identified? Because what the order that's been sent down here is find $880 billion. Not there is $880 billion of waste, fraud, and abuse. It's find $880 billion. And so we have not heard a single concrete number of the amount of waste that's been identified. We have not heard a single concrete number on the amount of abuse that's been identified. And there's just kind of this vague magic wand around waste, to my colleague from California's point. And waste is being used as a very large word here, because what's being suggested is that long-term care is wasteful in America, that children's health insurance is wasteful in America, that poor people seeing the doctor is a waste, that all of these people are disposable, that the elderly are disposable. So I think the problem here is that the numbers don't add up. The numbers don't add up. $880 billion is a devastating cut to Medicaid, and given that 30% of Medicaid dollars also go to Medicare, it's also an attack on Medicare, to Medicare recipients. And so while I completely understand the idea that there should not be waste, that there should not be fraud, and that there should not be abuse, $880 billion is not that. This is an attack on Medicaid, and anyone who votes on this budget this week is voting to cut Medicaid in America and voting to gut health care for Medicare recipients in America. There's just no other way around it.
Mr. Speaker, the gentlelady is talking about what was said in the Rules Committee last night. I want to take a couple of minutes to talk about how people voted in the Rules Committee last night. We gave Republicans a chance last night in the Rules Committee. We said if they really don't believe that this budget cuts funding for school meals, if they really believe what they're saying, then they can vote to assure the American people that they're not going to steal school meals from kids in order to give tax breaks for millionaires. Every Republican voted no, every single one of them. Then Democrats offered an amendment to protect Medicaid. And Medicaid, as you know, Mr. Speaker, covers 41% of all births in the United States, nearly half of children with special health care needs, and 5 in 8 nursing home residents. We asked them not to cut Medicaid in order to fund tax breaks for billionaires. Every Republican voted no. Then Democrats offered an amendment to extend tax cuts for people making under $400,000 while ensuring that corporations and billionaires pay their fair share. We asked Republicans to continue tax cuts for only those who need them the most, because those are the tax cuts they let expire while their tax cuts for greedy corporations were made permanent. We asked them to prioritize working families over greedy corporations. Every Republican voted no. Then Democrats offered an amendment preventing tax giveaways for people earning over $1 million a year. Every Republican voted no. We wanted to see if there was anyone so rich that Republicans don't think they deserve a tax giveaway. So we asked them to vote against tax breaks for people earning over $100 million per year. We asked them to side with factory workers and firefighters over hedge fund managers and billionaire bankers. Every Republican voted no. We even offered an amendment preventing tax cuts for people with a net worth of over, get this, $1 billion. Every Republican voted no. They betrayed their constituents. They voted to steal from the American people in order to protect tax breaks for billionaires. Again, this is about whose side you're on. And Republicans showed us last night with their votes whose side they're on. And it's not the working people of this country. I reserve my time.
Republican politicians are freaking out just a little bit that their own constituents are up in arms about all of these cuts that they're trying to create. But at the end of the day, this is nothing new for the Republican agenda, and Donald Trump doesn't care because he doesn't have to run for re-election again. He doesn't care what his approval rating is. He made it from going to prison, and now he's just kind of there, so it's an open auction. You know, one of the most frustrating things to me about all of this is, like I just said, this is nothing new in the Republican agenda. Ever since Social Security was created, the Republican Party's been trying to roll it back. George W. Bush, Donald Trump the first go-round, Ronald Reagan, all of these people on the forefront of their agenda, we're going to make these cuts, and then they end up cutting taxes for the wealthy and deregulating everything. This is nothing new. And it's really sad that voters in this country continuously fall for the same old tricks, really on the back of the ideals of racism. If it wasn't for the ideals of racism and the whole welfare queens, you know, these people are invading your country, or these black people, they're taking away your benefits that rightfully belong to you, because we know that white people take up most of the social benefits in this country, obviously because whites make up the majority of people in this country. But there's this notion like white people don't take Social Security or Medicaid or Medicare, but it's a program for people who need it. Doesn't matter what color you are. That shouldn't make a difference. But the Republican Party, for as many issues and corrupt problems that the Democrats have, the Republican Party is solely and only about lining the pockets of the wealthiest people in the country. That's all it's about. So all these poor white folk keep voting for Republicans because they keep buying into the ideals of racism. And it's really unfortunate to see that now, we're looking at $1 trillion in cuts to things like Medicaid and food stamps, and it was all so avoidable. But here we are.